Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all this morning to the gathering at Northern Hills. I'm Cheryl Lexon. I think everybody here probably knows me. I've been here, I don't know how many years, 9 years, 10 years long. Feels like my whole life because this is a place where I found my kindred spirits. We're going to have a really interesting Sunday morning here today, and I'm really glad that you are all here. I arranged to have someone come from the League of Women Voters and from Fair Districts to talk to us about the issue of gerrymandering. But before we get started in our in the service, we're going to go. Michael isn't here today, so we're going to be doing this via recorded music. So during the prelude, I invite you all to come up and drop a stone, help get everyone's minds and hearts set to be here, and then we'll go from there. So again, I welcome you all this morning. I think we might have a visitor or two. If so, welcome. We're glad to have you here today. If you are not familiar with our layout, out the doors and to the left is a restroom, and then after service we get together for coffee and munchies and chit-chat. As far as announcements, if it's all in your order of service. A couple things that I'd like to point out, please, is, of course, you all know that Election Day is Tuesday, so if you've not gone out and voted, please do so. Oh, Tom, please go do so. The polls will not be open tomorrow, so if you want to vote today, that'll work, or Tuesday, but they're not open tomorrow. And let's see, on some of the upcoming services, I wanted to point out, next week, Les Tacey will be here and talk about, okay, now that the election's over, what's next? How do we move? How are we going to be moving forward? And then, let's see, I know that we're going to also do Leftover Sunday on the Thursday after Thanksgiving. I think we started that last year, maybe the year before. So hang on to your Thanksgiving leftovers. And then that Sunday, bring them, and we're going to have a short service and then share from the bounty of our leftovers. The annual meeting will be held on December 8th, so put that on your calendar. If we're still looking for some people who might be interested in serving on the board. I've served on the board a gazillion times, I think. And with us being a smaller congregation, there's less commitment. We meet once a month for a couple of, maybe 2 hours via Zoom. And it's more of a matter of organization and finances, things like that. It's not a huge commitment. But if you're interested, if you'd please let me know so we can put you on our ballot so we actually have a vote for board members. We're not sure yet about a Christmas service. We put out feelers if people are interested in coming on Christmas Day for a service. It's in the middle of the week. I know that Christmas Eve day is very busy for people. Christmas Day might be busy. We don't want to do an evening service because I know many people are resistant to drive late in the evening when it's getting dark, and now it gets dark, at 3 o'clock or something, so. That's still being worked out as to whether or not we're going to have a separate Christmas Eve service or Christmas Day service. If there's a lot of interest, we'd love to do it. If you have ideas or if you have some input, yes, you want to have a Christmas morning service at 10:45, we'll do it. Let us, maybe next week we'll do a raise of hands. And I think that's it. Those of you who contribute to Lighthouse, we will not be, GNH will not be responsible for Lighthouse for November because we have another volunteer who's volunteered to do that. So if you have cookies or something stashed away, wait and we'll use it in December. So that's it for announcements. If you'd like to join with me and sing during the lighting of the chalice, Ravi has agreed to light the chalice for us this morning.
Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy. Rise up, O flame, by thy light glowing, show to us beauty, vision, and joy.
Thank you. I thought a lot over the past couple of days about opening words for today. And I was out standing in the dark last night. It was about, 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock, depending upon whether it was time change or not. And the sky was completely clear, and it was full of stars. And there's something very, very humbling to me, sitting out in the quiet and seeing the vastness of the universe in the quiet and stillness. And I thought, we need more of that stillness, right? Especially right now, in our country, in our lives, in our hearts. So I thought, maybe rather than opening words, we would do a couple minutes of meditation, trying to get our hearts and our spirits back. So if you'd like to join me, just sit comfortably. If you're comfortable closing your eyes, relax your hands in your lap. And think about, during these times of uncertainty, how our inner selves, that love, compassion, and peace that sits so deeply in our spirits and our souls, how sometimes in periods like these times of uncertainty and angst, that our inner selves can sometimes be covered, blanketed by, suffocated by our fear, frustration, and anger. So as you take a deep breath, tap into those positive feelings lying deep in your spirit. That love and joy, that compassion. And as you exhale out that frustration and that fear, that anger and pain that you may be experiencing. We need to reclaim our perspective. We need to recenter and reflect on who we are as individuals and who we are as a community. We cannot control the things that are outside ourselves, but we can control what's in our hearts. And I know we all have great love and compassion for humanity, for our fellow brothers and sisters. So as we think about that today, as you take that deep breath and fill yourself with positivity and the love that's emanating from this room, from all of us, let's find a way for recovery and renewal in a loving way to lay that foundation again. Let's recommit ourselves to support one another, but very importantly, to support ourselves. We're so fortunate to have such a beautiful community of people here. So let's take one more deep breath in. And then relax your shoulders and blow that breath out. And open ourselves to what we're going to learn today and how we can use that love and compassion to support vulnerable communities and make the world a better place, one person at a time. Yes.
Experience last night, which was very timely for me. I really urge everybody, there's an opinion piece in this morning's New York Times by a cosmologist from NASA who spent his entire career studying the voids in the universe. 80% of the universe is nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he suggests that, when contemplating that, it's easy to feel quite irrelevant, quite minuscule, but how his study of it is just the opposite, how every single act we take is so meaningful in context of the world. If you get a chance, take a look at that.
That sounds precisely the way I felt. I mean, you look in the sky and we're a piece of dust, but there's a power in that, and it's you're juxtaposing yourself as this vast, universe, and we're like nothing but a speck. How is that powerful? I don't know, but it felt that way. Yeah, thank you. I love when serendipity happens that way. Yeah, thank you. So, those are our opening words. You all shared them from your hearts. And now, let's share them in song. So if you'd like to stand and sing with us, Over My Head, which is the sky, and there you go. you'll join with me in reciting our unison affirmation, please. We pledge to create a welcoming community that celebrates human diversity, encourages spiritual growth, fosters responsiveness to our world, and commits to the future of all children. Yes. Yeah, I just thought of that while we were singing. Yep, no, don't be sorry because I was late. Hello, people on Zoom. Forgive me. Okay. Hi. Sorry about that. Okay, who do we have? Noreen in general. We have Suzanne, Marty, Les, and Dottie. Welcome. And I'm sorry I didn't do this earlier. I was so wrapped up in my head about how I wanted to do this morning. So now, if you'd like to be seated, we have a very special guest from the League of Women Voters, like I said, Ray Vuick, okay, and she's here to talk to us not just about issue 1 necessarily, but about gerrymandering and some of the history of gerrymandering and how it's come to be the way it is and how it shouldn't be. Okay, so.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me this morning, and thank you especially for your interest in Citizens Not Politicians, or Issue 1, which will be on your ballot when you go to vote, or maybe you already have voted. So you can go ahead to the next slide. So first of all, I want to tell you who we are. Fair Districts is a coalition of nonpartisan voting rights advocacy groups that's led by the League of Women Voters and Common Cause Ohio. It also includes the Ohio Council of Churches, the A. Philip Randolph Institute, and the ACLU, among others. Next slide. So this morning, what I'd like to talk about is as Cheryl mentioned, I'm going to first explain what redistricting is, and then explain how it goes wrong with gerrymandering, why gerrymandering is so bad anyway. And a lot of you may remember that we tried to fix this already twice, so I'll go into those fixes and why they didn't work, and how we can finally fix it for good with Issue 1. And so I'll talk a little bit about how that will ensure fair maps, how the commissioners are chosen, and then just give a small bit of voting information, because I'm sure you already know a lot of that. Next slide, please. So redistricting, as many of you know, is the process that we go through every 10 years after the U.S. Census comes out to redraw our election districts, and that's to make sure that our districts all have about the same population so that no district is more powerful than any other. So in Ohio, we have 3 sets of maps that get redistricted every 10 years, and those are the 2 state maps, our Ohio House and Ohio Senate map, and our U.S. congressional map to choose our congressman in D.C. Every state does it a little bit differently. In Ohio, we currently have a 7-member redistricting commission that's made up of politicians, 3 who are elected statewide and 4 members from the legislature. The current makeup is 5 Republicans and 2 Democrats. So, as I said, the main goal of redistricting is to make sure that those districts have the same amount of folks in them, and what goes wrong is gerrymandering, when the politicians in power rig the system by drawing maps to advantage their party and their candidates. Next slide, please. So I want to read this definition from the dictionary because it becomes important when I talk about the ballot language that you'll see when you go to vote. So gerrymandering is the practice of dividing our election districts in a way that gives one political party an unfair advantage in elections. And I like to describe gerrymandering as politicians picking their voters instead of we, the voters, choosing our representatives. Next slide. So how gerrymandered are we? Ohio is consistently listed as one of the top 10 most gerrymandered states in the country, and that's despite the recent reforms that we passed. So when we talk about gerrymandering, we look at the difference between the vote share that a party's candidates receives and compare that to the number of seats they actually hold in the legislative bodies. So in Ohio, in the House, even though the Republican candidates won just about 59% of the vote share, they hold 68% of the seats. So of the 99 House seats, 67 are held by Republicans and 33 are held by Democrats. In the Senate, it's even worse. Even though the Republican candidates received just shy of 60% of the vote share, they hold almost 80% of the seats. So there's 33 there's 33 state Senate seats, only 7 are held by Democrats. So this gives the Republicans a veto-proof supermajority in both of the legislative bodies, despite the fact that their vote share does not give them a supermajority. Next slide, please. I always like to mention when I give these talks that gerrymandering is a bipartisan issue. In Ohio, we happen to be a Republican-controlled state in our legislature, so the red team are the bad guys when it comes to gerrymandering, but if we lived in New York or Maryland, the blue team, the Democrats, would be the bad guys. So if you look at New York State, even though the Democrats received only around 50% of the vote share, they also hold veto-proof supermajorities in both of their legislative bodies, the Assembly and the Senate. So both parties do it. Next slide. And so we all know the pernicious way that gerrymandering can strip voters of their power and make our politicians less accountable to us. It also, very importantly, it makes districts less competitive. And when districts aren't competitive, the general election doesn't matter. The primary becomes the real election. And we all know that in primaries, there is low voter turnout. It's typically the most engaged voters, which lead often to the most extreme candidates. So that increases the hyperpartisanship that we have seen increase in all of our politics and in our legislative bodies. And it also leads to minority rule. Because the primaries have such low voter turnout, but those elections choose who our representatives are, and then those people aren't accountable to most of the voters. And we've seen this happen. So in the last year, when we had the election on reproductive rights, the election on legalizing marijuana, and the election to make sure that the way that we have ballot measures voted on in our state doesn't change. A majority of Ohioans voted for all of those things, but our legislator had been actively trying to not do any of those things. And we see that with a lot of issues, not just in Ohio, but across the country. So if you think that the politicians are ignoring you, you are not paranoid. They are ignoring you because your vote doesn't matter. Next slide, please. So didn't we already try to fix this? Next slide. Yes, we did. We've been trying to fix it actually for decades and decades, but most recently in 2015, we passed a statewide ballot initiative, an amendment to our Ohio Constitution to change the way that we draw our state maps. And in 2018, we passed an amendment to the Constitution to change the way we draw our U.S. congressional map. So the state maps are drawn now by a 7-member redistricting board that I mentioned, and that's what the 2015 amendment did. And it also tried to put in some bipartisan guardrails in that map-making process by that 7-member board. In 2018, with our federal map, with our U.S. congressional map, the legislature still gets the first cut at drawing that map, but if they can't pass the map on a bipartisan supermajority vote, then the process reverts to the 7-member redistricting commission. So that's how the process currently works. So we learned 2 really important things from this process. First, we learned that Ohioans strongly support fair districts. Both of those measures passed with over 70% of the vote, and they won in every county in the state. But more importantly, we learned that leaving politicians in charge of this process simply doesn't work. So we saw this after the 2020 census, when the map-making process began in 2021. The maps were drawn, challenged, and struck down as unconstitutional by the Ohio Supreme Court 5 times for our state maps and twice for our U.S. congressional maps. Next slide, please. So that process led to us voting on unconstitutional maps in 2022. So how do we finally fix this? We pass issue 1 on Tuesday. This amendment will replace the current 7-member politician-led redistricting commission with a 15-member citizens commission. And when we pass the amendment, it will be enshrined in the Ohio Constitution, so the legislature won't be able to mess with it. And once it passes, the commissioners will be seated in 2025. They will begin their work, and we will have our first citizen-drawn maps for the 2026 election. Next slide, please. So what exactly does this amendment do? First, as I said, it creates this 15-member citizen commission to replace the current politician-led commission. It'll be 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and 5 unaffiliated or independent members. It bans current or former politicians, lobbyists, paid campaign staff, and other political operatives and their immediate family members from serving on the commission. It makes it unconstitutional to favor one political party over another when drawing maps, and it requires the commission to operate in an open, public, transparent way that is chock full of bipartisan checks and balances, from the way the commissioners are chosen, from the way the maps are drafted and adopted, and even the way that challenges are handled at the Ohio Supreme Court. Next slide, please. So some of the ways that it ensures fair maps: first, it makes sure that federal law is followed, and including the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that prohibits racial discrimination when drawing our maps. As I said, it bans the favoring of one political party over another when drawing the maps, including the practice of considering a candidate or incumbent's address when drawing district lines, which happens. And importantly, the maps must preserve what are called communities of interest. And simply put, communities of interest are any group, neighborhood, community of people who share broadly recognized representational needs or interests and feel that they would be best served by being in the same district. So this could mean all the folks in the same municipality or township, in the same county, or even in the same school district. Next slide. This will create a truly open process and a very public process. So once the commissioners are seated, they will go on a tour of Ohio. They will hold public hearings in 5 different geographical regions and collect public input, especially on what those communities of interest mean to the public. All of the data that's used in drawing the map, census data, voting data, precinct boundaries, will be shared with the public. Once the maps are drafted, the commission is required to go back on the road back to the 5 geographical regions around the state and present the maps and take public input again. And if any changes are made to the maps based on that process, then they have to have 2 additional public hearings before they can adopt the maps. Next slide, please. So the law is clear when it comes to legal challenges. What we saw happen in 2022 is that when the maps were challenged and were struck down as unconstitutional by the Ohio Supreme Court, they didn't really, the court didn't really have much teeth because the redistricting commission ignored what they were being told by the Supreme Court, and as I said, it happened 5 times and then 2 more times with our federal maps. So they just ignored it. This amendment will not allow that process to happen. It will close the loopholes in the 2015 and the 2018 amendment. So any registered voter can file a challenge to a map. If there's more than one challenge, those challenges have to be consolidated into one case. The Ohio Supreme Court will have exclusive jurisdiction over that case, and only the Redistricting Commission will have standing to respond. When a challenge comes in, the Supreme Court, under this amendment, is required to make use of what's called special masters. And in the amendment, there's a pool of 6 special masters that are created. And a special master is basically a credentialed expert, demographers or lawyers who specialize in the field of election law and redistricting. And when a challenge comes in, the Supreme Court will choose 2 of the special masters from the pool of 6, and those special masters will review the challenge that's being made. They will review the maps, the report done by the commission, and the public record that was created. And then they will issue a report. And if they feel that the maps don't meet the requirements of the law, then they will send the map back to the Redistricting Commission to fix. If the commission does not fix the maps in accordance with what the special masters asked, then the Supreme Court can give the power to the special masters to make those changes, and we're done. So a fun fact and an important fact is that the Ohio Supreme Court Chief Justice Maureen O'Connor, who termed off of the Supreme Court after 2022, she was involved in, she voted with the Democrats on the Ohio Supreme Court to strike down the maps as unconstitutional, the sole Republican that did join the Democrats, and she is one of the lead architects of this amendment. And she used her experience during the debacle that was the 2022 map-making process to inform a lot of the detailed precautions and protections that are in this amendment. So I know a lot of you have heard this amendment is so confusing, it's really long, it's overly complicated. I don't like to think of it that way. It's actually very well thought out. They thought of every single thing. They closed every loophole. They thought of every trick, every way that the party in power used to stonewall, and they tied them all up in this amendment. So I like to just think of it as very well thought out and careful. Next slide, please. So how are the commissioners chosen? Next slide. So any Ohio resident who has lived in the state for at least 6 years and is not one of the prohibited categories, serving in a partisan position, a candidate for elective office, or registered lobbyist, can apply to be on the commission. And as an added protection, once you serve your term and draw the map and the maps are adopted, you come off of, you're done. Once you are done with that term, you are not allowed to run for office or be appointed or elected to any state office for 6 years prior to serving on the commission. Next slide, please. So people will be invited to apply from all over the state. The Ohio Department of Administrative Services will support the screening process, and they will screen out the prohibited categories and make sure that folks follow all the criteria, a registered voter, a resident of the state for 6 years. And then a bipartisan panel picks 45 finalists. So this bipartisan panel is a four-judge panel. It's retired judges. They are picked in a bipartisan way, meaning that the ballot board, which is a bipartisan panel as well, the two Democrats on the ballot board will choose the Republican judges, and the two Republicans on the ballot board will choose the Democratic judges. So this retired panel of 4 retired judges will then choose the 45 finalists who will be split evenly between Democrats, Republicans, and unaffiliated or independent. They will do this based on the strength of their application, and they also will go through an interview process. Both of these things will be made public, and people will be able to make public comment on the applicants, and the judges will have to review that information as well. They will also make sure that the commissioners represent a broad swath of Ohio, both demographically and geographically. Next slide, please. Then in a public meeting, the judges will randomly choose the first 6 commissioners from their final pool of 45, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 2 independents. And then these 6 commissioners will choose the final 9. And they will use the same criteria that the judges used by looking at the applications, the interviews, and the public comments. And they will also make sure that the final 9 represent the broad swath of Ohio demographically and geographically. Next slide, please. So once the 15-member commission is chosen, they will draw the maps according to the requirements. And to review, those requirements it has to be compliant with the Federal Voting Rights Act. The districts must be contiguous, meaning that all of the parts of the district must be adjacent to each other. It has to be roughly made up of the same number of people. And they have to be on a statewide basis, not on a district basis, but on a statewide basis. The maps must proportionally represent the way people vote in Ohio in statewide elections. They have to preserve the communities of interest, and of course they have to ignore where a candidate or incumbent lives. When maps are voted on, it requires 9 commissioners, and it has to be a tri-party vote, meaning that 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and 2 independents must be part of that 9 yes vote to adopt a map. Next slide, please. So that's basically the amendment in a nutshell. Before I get into a little bit of the voting information and then take questions, I wanted to mention the ballot language. So I'm sure many of you have heard what happened with the ballot language. Ballot language is supposed to be a brief summary of what happens, a brief objective summary of, objective summary of what you're voting on. So when you go to the poll, sometimes amendments can be very long. It's supposed to be a brief objective summary. But what the Secretary of State, who serves on the ballot board and is also on the Redistricting Commission, Frank LaRose, he wrote the ballot language. He wrote basically a treatise against the amendment. In the first paragraph of the ballot language, it actually says that this amendment requires gerrymandering. So when you're driving around and you see the no on issue 1 signs, that's why it says stop gerrymandering. And when I read the definition of gerrymandering earlier in the presentation, they took a definition that just says that gerrymandering is manipulating districts, voting districts. They left out the unfair part. So that is how they justified it, and when the challenge was made to the Ohio Supreme Court, the Supreme Court upheld that language. So what we always tell people is, don't read the ballot language when you go to vote. Read the amendment before you go in. If you read the ballot language, you may not want to vote yes. And just know that when you do vote yes, you're not voting on that ballot language. You're voting on the actual amendment. Next slide, please. So most of these dates have already passed. I just wanted to point out that tomorrow, if you do have a mail-in ballot, tomorrow is the last day to get that ballot postmarked. So please don't just put it in your mailbox for your mailman to take or drop it in a post box in the business district. Take it into the post office and make sure you get that postmark stamp on your ballot, or you can take it directly to your county board of elections, and they will accept them up until the polls close on election day. Of course, election day is November 5th, and if you forget to bring your photo ID, or for some reason you don't have it that day, you can vote provisionally, and you will have 4 days past election day or until November 9th to what the Board of Elections calls cure your ballot, which means take your ID down to them, show them your ID, and then your vote will count. Next slide, please. So just a word about photo ID. Ohio has one of the strictest voter ID laws in the country. A valid ID means a Ohio-issued driver's license or state ID that is unexpired. You can also use a military ID, a government-issued military ID, or a U.S. passport. And again, you can't be turned away on election day, so if you don't have ID and they try to turn you away, that's not legal. You can still vote provisionally, and then you'll have the 4 days to go in and cure your ballot. Next slide, please. So voteohio.gov is a great resource. If you did send your ballot in and you want to track it, you can go to voteohio.gov, and there's a link to track your ballot. You can see if it's already arrived at the Board of Elections, so that's a great little tool. And we always give out the number 866-OUR-VOTE, OURVOTE. If you have problems on election day, if you see something that you think is not okay, we advise people to call this number, report what you're seeing, and you can get help through this helpline. And I think that's it. Next slide. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Sir?
We're going to get the mic. Hold on.
Oh.
He's getting you the mic.
That was wonderful. Thank you for your presentation. I learned so much.
Okay. Thank you. I'm glad.
2 questions. Would you speak to historically the impact of gerrymandering on voters of color? And in the new amendment, can communities of interest include ethnic groups?
Okay. So first, I don't have a lot of statistics or details on how it has affected communities of color, but that is one of the key ways that politicians in power have used gerrymandering to dilute those voices. And a lot of times, with gerrymandering, there's packing and cracking. So where you pack all of the votes that you don't like into 1 or 2 districts, and then you take all of the rest. Or you crack, meaning you'll take Hamilton County, which is a blue county, and you will take the eastern portion of the county and the western portion of the county and send them off into the other counties where their votes will be diluted, and then you will just leave all of the middle part for the others. So that is one way. A lot of times, people of color live in urban centers, and the politicians will use packing or cracking to dilute those votes and make those votes not count. And your second question was?
In terms of the amendment, can communities of interest include ethnic groups?
So that's a really interesting question. I'm not sure if the amendment actually speaks to ethnic groups, but it does speak to things like Indian tribes. So I will say that it does speak to, when you say ethnic groups, yes, I think that folks who are, it does speak to race. So, you know, when you get down to, I'm Serbian, like if all the Serbs down in Cincinnati wanted to be in the same district, I don't know if that would hold a lot of water. If our interests as Serbians would, although, you know, we would argue very vociferously for that. But race would certainly be, and sometimes language. I think language is in the amendment as well. So, so yeah, but I would have to look. But yeah, and they're supposed to use communities of interest now, but they basically ignore it. And that is, the communities of interest are interesting in another way, because a lot of folks will say, why don't we just have computers do this? Just draw the maps, put all the data in, and have them spit out these perfect maps. And what the AI misses in doing that are the communities of interest and getting down to exactly what people care about and what issues they care about and who they feel their people are. Yes.
Real quick, if you let, because this is my field, and AI, if you let computers decide something, somebody has to program it.
Exactly. Exactly.
Did you say that Maureen O'Connor created this amendment?
She was one of the lead architects, yes.
I was wondering,
And she's been campaigning for it. You may have seen her in the commercials.
so how many people worked on the amendment?
Oh, I don't know the exact number of people, but I know there has been a large group of people from the League of Women Voters and Common Cause who took up this charge. And it wasn't they've been doing redistricting work. These two groups have been doing redistricting work in Ohio since the 80s, when the Democrats were gerrymandering Ohio. So I don't know exactly how many people crafted the amendment, but I know that those are the groups that were most prominent, and Maureen O'Connor was a very big voice.
And what were the groups again?
The League of Women Voters and Common Cause Ohio are the two leads in the coalition, but the coalition also includes the Ohio Council of Churches, the ACLU, and the A. Philip Randolph Institute, and other groups. These are all voting right and good government advocacy groups.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. And they are nonpartisan groups. They're all nonpartisan groups.
Yeah, can you and Maureen O'Connor run for president in 2028?
Well, I hope she will, for sure. She's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. You seem pretty amazing too. Two questions. One, for perspective, if 1 is the least gerrymandered and 50 is the most gerrymandered, where would you say Ohio is currently?
We're in the top 10, and I don't know.
Like the bottom, like we're one of the
top
most
10
gerrymandered.
Most gerrymandered
Okay.
states. We are in the top 10. I don't know exactly where we fall in
We're
the
in the
top
bag.
10, but it probably shifts around.
And when, if we would get issue 1 implemented, in your opinion, where would that put us in that ranking? Like, would we
Well,
be the cutting edge of non-gerrymandering?
Well, I will tell you this. There are 7 other states who have citizens commissions.
Okay.
Now, they're all a little different than 7. There are 7 states, and they all do it a little bit differently than what this Ohio law will do, because this law was based on the experience that we went through. So it's crafted a little bit differently. And there is a Common Cause is a group that I mentioned that they give report cards to states on their redistricting process, and the states that have citizens commissions get A's and B's. Our state got I think we got a D last time around. We probably should have gotten an F. So yes. So I don't know where we will wind up
Probably top 10.
ranked, but I think that the process will be much better. I think people will be happy with the outcome. I think people will feel that it is a more fair representation. And when I was talking about the things that that the law has to do, when I talked about proportionality, so you look at and this is something that those in power who are opposed to the law have grasped onto to say that this is gerrymandering. So there's a metric in this amendment. So currently, when they draw maps, they are supposed to look at the way people vote in statewide elections. So we are about a 57% red state when we vote statewide. Some elections are higher, some elections it's a little bit lower, but we probably fall within that range. So they want the map statewide should reflect that. So in our districts, we should have about 50, anywhere from 56 to 60% R districts and the rest D districts. So that is supposed to be how it's done now, but they make that a very low on the totem pole priority. This amendment puts a metric in it, and it says it can't deviate by the statewide voter preferences by plus or minus 3 points. So the folks in power are saying this is gerrymandering. This is manipulating the map so that you come out with this with these voter preferences. But that's the way it's supposed to happen. They just don't prioritize that.
That was exactly my second question.
Yeah.
You mentioned primaries. Has the League of Women Voters or anyone considered having an open primary where you don't have to declare? You pick one candidate that you would like to see, because I know many times most of the time I would pick a Democrat. But there are times when if I had an open primary, I could very easily want a Republican.
You can choose in Ohio which ballot you want.
I know, but once you get to choose the ballot, you're done. You can't, if in fact I pick a Democratic ballot,
Oh, I see what you mean.
I can't vote for any Republican at all.
Right.
And or vice versa. And that really limits how the primary works. And I think there's 3 states now that have open primaries. And I think that would go a long way to help the division,
Yeah.
because many times you don't like either one of the.
Yeah. I don't know if that is something they're looking at. It sounds like something they would look at. I know they're also looking at instant runoff voting, which is another way to sort of eliminate the extremes. And yeah,
If you don't get 50%,
it starts over. The extremes are eliminated, and then you start over.
Can the Supreme Court override the master's recommendations? After all, this is the Supreme Court that approved the language that went on the ballot, and the one that said that boneless chicken wings can be boneless.
According
Can
to
have bones, I should say.
can have bones.
according to the amendment, the Supreme Court is supposed to go with the recommendation of the special masters. According to the amendment.
We're getting close on time, so Sue, you have a question? Yeah, and then somebody else.
But it does eliminate a lot of the other. So, for instance, right now, and I know we're running out of time. Right now, what happened? So, the Supreme Court said it's unconstitutional. Go draw another map. So they went and drew another map. That was unconstitutional. Also, they didn't have to listen, and they didn't have to vote bipartisan. So the 7-member commission is supposed to vote in a bipartisan manner to approve a map. And if they are unable to do that, the maps are only good for 4 years instead of 10. So then they have to go through the process all over again, and it just allows them to kick the can down the road. Then in 4 years, they'll do the exact same thing, and then in 4 years, they'll do the exact same thing ad nauseum. So this amendment doesn't allow that. So if you don't vote on that tripartisan manner, then it will not pass. You do not get a loophole to run around that rule. You have to stick to that rule.
Suzanne?
So there are more protections.
I believe you said at the beginning that there are 3 maps that are involved, and I think one is for state representatives, one for U.S. congressional districts, and the other was for the Senate. What does the Senate map look like?
The Senate map, it's not the U.S. Senate, it's our Ohio State Senate.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and so there's 99 House districts, and every House district contains 3. I'm saying this the wrong way. There are 33 Senate districts, and each Senate district contains 3 House districts. So there's 99 House maps. So
Great, thank you.
And Sue? No? Okay.
There have been 5 occasions.
I'm sorry?
Really think I need this? Yes. There have been 5 occasions since 1950 when one presidential candidate has gotten the majority vote and the other presidential got the majority electoral vote. Now, I understand that there are some states that have committed to, but not enacted, to devote all of their electoral votes to the candidate that gets the majority U.S. vote. And they have stated that as soon as so many more states do that, they're going to enact that. Do you know anything about that?
I think to change the Electoral College, you have to change the Constitution. And that requires 2/3 of the states to ratify, which is a really high bar. But there are lots of
Each state has the right to choose their electoral vote.
true.
And this is what the state said they're going to do. They're going to choose their electoral votes by what the majority of the country has stated. And they can do that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I bet it will go to the Supreme Court. And
Some states divide their electoral college.
well, they have different districts. They don't have winner take all. There are states that are not winner take all. Yeah, we could do that for sure. Yes, and I think that's a little different than what this gentleman's talking about. He's saying that even if the state votes one way, but the country in the popular vote voted another way, that state would be able to give those votes to the popular vote winner. That, I think, would take a change. That might take a bigger change. But yes, we could become a not winner-take-all state. Yes.
Yes, thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah, I think maybe we need to have part 2. This is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I can stick around I do need a cup of coffee.
Yeah, well, we have great coffee, so, yeah, you are known for great coffee. Okay, thank you again. At this time, we're going to reach down in our pockets and find ways that we can financially help support our community, both our local and global community. So if you are visitors, please just let the basket pass. We're just really glad that you came in to share your time with us today.
Oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming. Oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming. Oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming. Oh yes, oh freedom, oh freedom, oh freedom, freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Oh yes, I know. Oh yes, I know. Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Oh yes, I know. Oh yes, I know. Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Justice. Yes, I justice. Yes, I justice. Justice is coming. Oh yes, I know. Justice. Yes, I justice. Yes, I justice. Justice is coming. Oh yes, I know. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. Freedom is coming. Oh yes, I know.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah. At this time is when you share what might be going on in your lives, your joys and your sorrows. We like to know what's going on with you so that we can share your joys and help unburden you with the sorrows you may be experiencing.
I just wanted to let people know, some of you will remember Pam and Fred Stoll, who were members of this congregation and were wonderful violin players and fiddle players, I think they might say, but they did a lot of contra dancing things. They live in North Carolina, and during the storms, a tree came down on their house, totally demolished it, demolished all their instruments and their 2 cars. They were in the house with their 2 cats, and all of them escaped, but they are in the midst of rebuilding everything. So please keep them in your thoughts and prayers. And I'm going to mention one second thing, that we had a special joy when Tom and I went to vote. There was a very long line and of cars, but I mean, we got in and out so fast, and everyone was so kind and so efficient. And you know, the first voters come and they ring the bell and everybody claps, and it was just a wonderful atmosphere. Of course, there were the folks outside yelling various things, but anyhow, when I got home, if you go on the Board of Elections website and you go to contact us, you can send them an email saying that they did a wonderful job and thank you so much for their service, because they're getting a lot of really awful emails. So please, if you've had a good experience, let them know, because within an hour, I got back a response, a reply that said, thank you so much, and I will let the team know. So please do that.
Just one more comment about our voting experience. Several weeks ago, if you'll recall, we did a service that brought in some representatives of the Mauritanian community, Mr. Ousmane Sow. And when we went to do early voting, there were a group of Republicans there screaming very vile things about the Mauritanian community. And it just was such a pain to know what they're going through, and just to see the hatred that was being screamed to potential voters.
Hi guys, I'm back. So I need a little bit of support and a little bit of love. You guys know that I live part-time in North Carolina, and last May I formed a Facebook group called Liberals of Oak Island because it's deep red country, and for well, since we bought the house in 2008, we've been underground as liberals. And Brad lives there almost full time now. And he's like, we need friends, we need friends. And I said, I need community. So I've formed a really lovely group of friends, 650. And the Deep Red MAGAs have alerted the militia that I'm a danger, and I'm calling for their demise. So I've been in touch with Homeland Security and North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, and we have a police watch on our house, and we're hoping it does not burn down tomorrow night. So, yeah, not expected when I formed a little social Facebook group, but the militia is definitely after us, and there is a really hot and heavy hate campaign against me in particular. I've been doxxed. That means everyone on Oak Island Facebook groups has my face, my phone number, my email, my house picture address, my car picture, and my car license plate. So I'm kind of hanging out in Ohio for the time being, and this is really stressful. So get out and vote, pray, manifest, be positive, because I fear this next week is going to be ugly in all parts of America.
Amen to that. Good news is, I want to say, let me just go finish real quick. I'm glad you came. See, we got some young people out there working for us. I'm 82, so you're young. But we need more of you.
I have a joy, and I want to thank the great team of volunteers who helped last Sunday as we assembled 300 packets for Shakely Center of Lighthouse, and those were delivered to them, and we'll try to do it again in about 3 months, if we can. All right. Thank you.
And Betsy.
Three of our grandchildren are voting for the first time on Tuesday.
Yay.
And the fun part is that two of them are going to the polls with us.
Very nice.
And so it's kind of different to have that sort of experience again. So we're looking forward to it.
Well, speaking about the Mauritanians, we have always been a supporter of Valley Interfaith Community Resource Center, and for some of you who have known, I don't know if you know Glenn Howie, who has been in charge of their pantry for many years. He was a very dedicated worker, a wonderful man. He passed away suddenly this past week. And it was just before he was to walk a couple weeks before he was to walk his daughter down the aisle. So it's a huge tragedy for his family, for all the people who knew him, and for Valley. He's going to be hugely missed. But I want to take that as a reminder that since we support Valley, we also, and the Lighthouse, we said we would donate 10 $50 gift cards to either Amazon or Walmart to Lighthouse, and however many we could collect, $25 gift cards to Walmart for Valley, as well as children's toys and also canned goods. And I have, since Glenn is no longer with us, I haven't been able to find out what canned goods he would like us to donate. I hope to find out this week. But anyway, please be thinking of his family, of Valley, and, you know, all the people who knew Glenn. He was a wonderful support.
And I'll drop us.
Anybody on
Oh,
Zoom?
anybody on Zoom that has anything they'd like to share?
Okay.
Okay. Oh, is there somebody? Les.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
I really enjoyed the service today. Thank you so much for your presentation. Our house is a COVID house. I'm masked right now, so we're hoping that next Sunday, Steph and I both will be able to be there for the service. And one of the sad outcomes of Steph getting COVID is that we both have been removed from working the polls on Tuesday. So we have been doing that for so many years, and we're sorry we won't be able to for this particular iteration, but we look forward to future, and we certainly hope that this vote goes in a positive way and that people vote for this. And thank you again for your presentation.
I'm going to go ahead and drop a stone for all the joys and sorrows that may have been left unsaid. And then if you'd like to stand and sing with us, we are a gentle, angry people.
We are gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for life. We are gentle, angry people, and we are singing, singing for life. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for life. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing, singing for lives. We are hurt and weary people, we sing, sing for lives. We are hurt and weary people, we are singing, singing for lives. We are gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for life. We are gentle, loving people, and we are singing, singing for lives.
And some closing words. I gave a lot of thought about how to tie in our spirituality, our values, our principles, and voting, which is, of course, supporting the free and democratic process, which is a part of what we all believe. And tie in also what we talked about in terms of the angst and the anger, the fear that we may all be experiencing that may be blanketing over that core of love, of fairness and justice and compassion. You often hear the phrase, be armed with the truth, be armed with knowledge. And I thought a lot about that, and I thought, let's not be armed. Let's weave that love of justice and that love of truth and facts and compassion and our understanding or our wanting to understand. Let's weave all that together and wear that. Let's clothe ourselves in that rather than being armed with it. So when people see us, that's what they see, that's what they see us clothed in. And I thought that was a much better visual than arming ourselves. And as I was chewing this around in my brain on my way here this morning, I had I was born in the 60s, so I'm not a child of the 60s, despite my peace earrings that I wore today. But the image that came to me was, hey, let's be the carnation and not the rifle. You know of what I refer to? Yeah, because I thought it was a daisy, but I looked it up. It was a carnation, because I thought it was a date. No, And of course, we all believe that, but I think sometimes we get sucked into the debates and the arguments and the frustrations, and I think that we need to remember to clothe ourselves in that compassion so that people can see us for who we are. And with that, keep the fire burning. Just don't scald yourself. And join us for coffee and goodies. And thank you very much for being here today. No, thank you.